When it comes to the G.I. Joe Classified series, there is a really cool sub-team that's not explicitly stated out loud, like it doesn't have its own logo, but it is important nonetheless. It's the Crimson team in... Why is there a bug in here? I don't know what's going on. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Crimson Alley Viper. Why am I just getting to this figure now? Well, for starters, he was extremely difficult to track down. For whatever reason, the Alley Vipers are a sought-after troop builder. Well, I actually kind of know the reason, because the original Alley Viper was really cool. It comes with a lot of accessories, it's really well done, it's very imposing, and I'm curious to see if the Crimson Alley Viper follows suit. And from just judging by the packaging, I think so, because from what I can tell, again, packaging-wise, there is no marked difference between the original Alley Viper and the Crimson Alley Viper. But what I'm curious to see is just how well the crimson color wears on this Alley Viper, and does it fit into the sub-team? So the Crimson Guard as well as the Crimson Bat. So those are the ones I have. So we'll find out, and all you gotta do is just wait until I unbox this guy. So here we go. Here is our Crimson Alley Viper all ready to go. Some assembly is required. If you want to put this on his helmet, you just gotta slide this piece on. It does hinge very nicely though, so that is kind of something to look forward to. If you're curious, I like to have my visor up. I like seeing the eyes. It's a little more menacing, and if you take a look at the profile a little bit, it almost looks like a Cobra or a Viper of some kind, like trying to bite, trying to strike. And this is that type of character here. So what is different about the Crimson Alley Viper? If we hold them side by side, you can tell that the only difference is the paint scheme on this. Now that's both good and bad, so let's get into the reasons why that is. First on the start is the shield. You can see that the shield gets a lot of, I think, better decoration. I do like the orange and blue. I think that's a very classic Alley Viper look, but if you look at the Crimson Alley Viper, you can see that the Cobra logo, using this guy as a pointer, you can see that the Cobra logo is the thing that's highlighted. And I think that really sets it apart well. If this would have been like a blue Cobra logo, I think that would have been kind of cool. I like this, I guess, 90s camo on it. It feels like a missed opportunity looking at this Alley Viper. Now the other difference is their visors. So there is a distinct pattern here underneath like his Cyclops eye, and there's a distinct pattern here. So the blue is very sparingly used, whereas on the normal Alley Viper, there's a little bit of green sparingly used on the inside of the shield. So yeah, looking at these two, it's really the biggest differences that I see. So let's talk more about this. We'll put him back on the shelf. So if we talk about this character in terms of utility, this is going to be a bruiser. This is going to be an enforcer. This is going to be somebody who is not very agile. This is not a ninja at all. It's a heavily armored unit that you could troop build. And there's a lot of things that signify this, and when you look really closely at it and you try to pose it, that becomes even more apparent. And the biggest limitation on this character, above all, is the heavy flak jacket. So when we have this Alley Viper vest, we are locking in the torso. You can move the head, you can move the arms, but the arms, they do have a good range down, even though that the vest is quite bulky. It is scooped just underneath the armpit so that it gets a better range of motion. I wouldn't say it's the best. There is some consideration that you have to make for this bulky of a character. And if we look at the legs, there's just a lot of gear around the thighs that can feel like it hinders movement. And in fact, when I got this guy out of the box, what I had to do is I kind of had to remove, or I guess not remove, but adjust the placement of these thigh straps so that it wouldn't impede the movement of the thigh swivel. Now, while we're talking about swivels and stuff like that, there's an additional boot swivel here. And if you look at it, it kind of looks like these armor plates are off center. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I don't know why that would be, but it just feels like I line everything up. The boot just kind of points out a little bit, where I would think everything should align very well. I don't know what the reason for that is. Maybe it was just part of the sculpting. Maybe it was a conscious decision. Maybe it was an unconscious decision. I'm not quite sure. But as we're talking about mobility, the shield has a surprising amount of mobility. It is on a pivot joint, so I can move it like this. So he could use it as a spear, or he can move it like this to shield more of his body or more of his squad. There was an imperfection here. So if I look on the very edge of the shield, we can see right there at that edge, there is some flashing. the injection mold piece that went in wasn't cleanly released, and there must have been some kind of cleanup that needed to happen, or it got too aggressively cleaned up, something like that. A rare thing to see on G.I. Joe Classified series, because for the most part, when I open these and I experience the action figure, there's not too many areas that are just blatantly missed like that. But everything else seems really well done, well appointed for this figure. So we have just a lot of different colors. We mentioned the blue that's used very sparingly, but we have a lot of these grays, blacks, the crimson, which I'm going to test against some of his squad mates a little bit later. And then we also have just the smallest touches of brown near some of his tactical vest pockets. So this is it's a feast for your eyes when you're looking at this character, where it didn't necessarily have to be. The one thing, I guess, is a complaint about the overall paint is that the accessories, the weapons, either of the main machine guns or this, I guess, grappling hook launcher, they could have used just a little stripe of paint to differentiate from the mostly black arm of the character. It just feels like an extension. There doesn't feel like that separation between the glove and then the main weapon. And as you saw, I have this weapon to the side, but if I wanted to, I could also fit it in this hand, and I could carry every single piece of accessory on this character. And something that I don't think G.I. Joe Classified gets enough credit for, all of the magazines in the weapons are removable. It is just one of those tiny little details that, is it needed? Absolutely not, but am I glad it's there? Absolutely yes. As we talk further about the design of this, we look at the backpack. It isn't seated extremely well. It does give it the center of balance kind of shifts, is what I'm trying to say here. Like, it feels like a proton pack though, because that element right there, it feels very Ghostbusters-esque, which is kind of like a nice nod, because G.I. Joe, 80s, Ghostbusters, 80s. It's not identical, but I think there's heavy inspiration being pulled from there. But yeah, so in addition to the shield, the two main machine guns, he comes with a sidearm. He comes with 2 knives, one like up near his shoulder, and then one on his forearm on his, I guess, main weapon hand. The other cool thing about the shield is because when I showed that this can move around and pivot, it can also move hands too. So if you want to move this sheath over to the other hand, like, that's all possible. Very modular, very configurable, which for a troop builder is a great thing, especially if we're not getting additional head sculpts. Not that you would need additional head sculpts because of the ski mask over the face. You could put the helmet down to further differentiate it a little bit, but overall, these are just blank canvases, something that you could definitely build an army with. Speaking of army, he goes really well with the Crimson squad that I have. So I put him next to the Crimson Guard, I put him next to the Crimson Bat, and something that I found for the G.I. Joes, like Night Force in particular, is that some of the colors will evolve or change over time, but for the Crimson Cobra, it feels like the color is locked in, and each of the unit go very well cohesively, but also recognizing and adding some points of differentiation so that they all don't blend together. I think the biggest change for me is the Crimson Guard, which stands out as probably like the leader of one of these units. Has a lot more silver. It's a lot, like a different construction, a very, I would say, old school military, where the Bat as well as this Alley Viper are very modern, futuristic, kind of forward-leaning in terms of their squad. So I've talked about things that I've liked. I've talked about things that I don't like. Is there anything that I could have possibly wanted to change with this figure? And really, there isn't a whole lot. I feel like just adding a little stripe of paint to the main weapons would have been the change that I would like to have seen. Maybe removing the extra brown, where it's like a fun little detail if you're looking at it sculpturally. But if we're taking a look at like what paint would provide the most impact for the character, it would be adding some paint to the weapons so that you could pull some differentiation between the arm, the extension, as well as the main weapons. That's really it. Like, this is a fantastic little figure. I'm so glad I was able to track it down. And if you're able to track down this particular figure, I highly recommend you do so, especially if you're into troop builders, because this lines up fantastically with any other Crimson Cobra that you might have. But standalone, it is a fantastic figure as well. I'm really looking forward to getting a look at the Trench Viper, which will round out all of the Alley Viper variants. But you let me know in the comment section, do you like the Crimson series of Cobra figures? Is that the best sub-team we have? Because for me personally, I'm not a big fan of the Python Patrol, but the Crimson stuff, I'm all about. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And if you like our discussion on action figures, I talk a lot about action figures, G.I. Joe in particular, even though it's been a while since I got to this, I'm looking at an entire shelf of boxes that we got to get through in G.I. Joe. Action figures, collectibles, pop culture, blasters, anything action related. You can stay tuned here at the Ri-Fi channel. All you got to do is hit subscribe, and I know you'll like the future videos that I've got coming for you. So yeah, that's all I know about the Crimson Alley Viper. Find this guy if you can, especially if you like the troop builders. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.